climate change once brought millions of people onto the streets. But now, because of the coronavirus pandemic, most are staying indoors.
I understand that we are in the COVID-19 pandemic, but this does not mean that we should forget about the climate change crisis.
So with climate strikes cancelled and big talks postponed, how is coronavirus impacting the climate movement? I've been talking to activists around the world to see what they think.
Now with the coronavirus pandemic, my climate activism has been affected.
Xiye Bastida is a climate activist from the indigenous Otomi Toltec community in Mexico. She's currently studying in New York, where every Friday she used to take part in climate strikes.
It just made us lose a little bit of the momentum that we had.
Social distancing measures has definitely affected the way that we do activism.
Michaela Loach has had to postpone a climate camp that she had been organising in Scotland.
We've now had to think about what the climate world's going to be like after this.
What do we want?
Climate justice.
When do we want it?
Now!
As an activist, I can no longer go outside to do the climate strikes.
Vanessa Nakate is a Ugandan climate activist who has campaigned alongside Greta Thunberg for climate action.
Before we could go to schools and talk to students, but now that's impossible because the schools are closed.
Things like COP26 have been delayed until next year.
By the way, that's the big UN climate conference that was supposed to be happening in Glasgow this year.
So I think the coronavirus can have both positive and negative impacts for the environment. So positive is probably the fact that we're seeing lower air pollution levels. There's sort of that possibility of what happens when we as humans don't impact on the environment.
Some Indigenous activists feel they're now having to fight on two fronts against COVID-19 and climate change. Elena Guailinga is from the indigenous Sarayaku community in Ecuador.
Indigenous communities are extremely vulnerable to the coronavirus. It could wipe out our elder generation. They're also facing other crises caused by climate change. When the corona crisis was happening in the beginning, my community and other communities were hit by massive floods covering our houses.
But during this pandemic, climate activists are trying to adapt.
So we're doing digital strikes online, which are basically where you post a picture of yourself with a climate placard to help raise awareness.
And lots of groups have started doing online learning lessons about climate change. Andres in Lebanon hosted one about agriculture. But what can be learned from the coronavirus crisis?
Politicians can listen to the science. We should keep on pushing them to listen to us.
We can use this time to learn and think about what kind of world do we want to create after this, because they're not going to want another crisis like this again.